We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway Hurling podcast, with me, Patrick Earley, and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings-on in Galway Hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and, of course, focusing on inter-county. In this, Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Tribe Talk. You're joined by me as usual, David Connors, and my co-host Patrick Earley. Patrick, how's the crack?
Alright, David, how are you?
Mighty.
I'm a little less depressed than I was a day or two ago, but
I can imagine. We had contrasting fortunes, I suppose, at the weekend first, but anyway, we'll get into that in a bit. In a chaotic weekend of action, Jesus, permutations, scores for, less guess goals. Jesus, the weekend had it all. It was I don't remember a weekend like it in Championship Hurling since I've been covering it anyway.
Definitely not, because as we mentioned before, we're 3 or 4 years into the kind of the 6-team groups, and it simply doesn't throw up that kind of drama come the final round of matches, you know. So it's been brilliant in that regard. Now I'm not sure a lot of the teams in Senior A will agree with you, particularly the few of the teams that finished third, and the Senior B teams getting a handy ride of it this year. But look, that's just the way it's played out this year, and it's been a great championship so far, to be fair. A lot of great action over the weekend, and a lot more to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. So we're busy men anyhow, that's for sure.
Do you kind of just for a second? Do you kind of prefer the 4-team groups, or would you prefer the 6, or just from a player's point of view, kind of what would you personally prefer?
Yeah. See, it's hard to compare this year to any other year in that, you know, if we're to have a 4-team group next year, would we be having the 2 games in April and then the 2 games in August again? In which case, I'd say go back to the 6, because when we come back and after training for 2 or 3 months, when the inter-counties go on, if everything goes back to normal, we don't know, but if everything was to go back to normal, you know, you play your 2 games in April, have a month off or a few weeks off, then go back to training for another 2 months, and then to come back and do all that for maybe possibly 2 championship games. I don't know, would the desire be there really for a player, unless there was a thing you forget about it altogether until Galway are out of the championship, you know. But look, we're not going to get into that too much tonight. Certainly, as a product over the last couple of weeks to play in and to report on, I found it brilliant, and I think, you know, as a player, you know, to have that certainty that, you know, we're out this week, we're out 2 weeks after that, we're out 2 weeks after that, and then thereafter the championship is as long as you make it yourself. You know, you've got your set number of games, and the way it was kicking off in the July, start of August this year, it's been perfect, I think, for teams to have, you know, your 3 games and 3 meaningful games for the vast majority of teams, you know, and it's all led into a brilliant championship, as we said.
With the split season as well, it could be more feasible, we'll say, you know. But again, we probably won't go into that. But I've heard, just kind of talking to a few older players, they said they might have prolonged their career if they didn't have to come back in January for 2 games in April, and then kind of take the summer off. But sure, look, that's another one down the road. We have a jam-packed schedule here to go through first, and you know, at least I suppose the permutations are out of the way. We know what's coming up. Like from now on, it's match on the day, result on the day kind of things until the final. So, we're going to be set up for some cracking games. But just looking back at last weekend, we'll start as usual with Senior A Group 1. Jesus, heartbreak for Larkins. My God, like you'd have to feel for them. Like 2 wins from 2, and somehow they've, you know what I mean, Cappy and Lochrea pulled it out of the fire late on. I suppose first game, Cappy were probably deserved winners in fairness to them, and you know they were worthy of their place. What they held 15 to 10 point lead with 14 minutes remaining, and Larkins weren't able to punish them for a finish, which is kind of disappointing, really. Larkins' attack didn't really fire Jason Flynn aside, although he was supposed to be. I only kind of caught glimpses of it myself. Now I don't know. Did you see the whole game, or did you saw most of it? He looked good from the bits I seen anyway. But like how it finishes, Cappy's +7 was enough for them to top the group. Then Larkins and Lochrea, then they there was supposed to be in Ballinasloe and Athenry, there was supposed to be a delay between the two of them. They didn't know who came through, but eventually it came down that it emerged that they had both +5 scoring difference, but Lochrea somehow had a higher scores for, which was the next factor. And in the end, Jesus, Larkins with 2 wins from 2 and just losing 1 game by 3 points, and they're out of the championship. It's heartbreaking for them, really, isn't it, Patrick? It's just it feels sorry for them in a way, but I suppose they knew what they had to do, and I suppose they didn't do it in the end, So we can have no complaints, really.
Yeah, like you look at, like, technically they're in the same position going into last week as Turlock were, as St Thomas's were, and the comparison in that they had to go out and play Capitagal, who were fighting for their lives, and Turlock and Thomas went out and played 2 teams that were already relegated. It's just the way it's worked out was harsh on them. But look, they had, as you say, they had a job to do. Everything was in their own hands, and on the day they were just beaten by a better team. They were beaten by a Cappy team that got their house back in order after disappointing out, and definitely by their own admission against Lochrea. They've kind of answered a lot of questions that were posed of them following that game. Defensively they were way more sound. We talked about the threats that Larkins had up there. Flynn, obviously, Conor Gardner, Ronan Murphy. Flynn had a great game, and look, there's days where some lads you simply can't keep a handle on. And in fairness, Ronan Garvey did do a lot of very good stuff on him.
Yeah,
but he was just in great form. And like when a lad like Jason Flynn is in form like that, there's not a man in the country that can really keep that tight leash on him. But him aside, Declan Cronin was excellent on Ronan Murphy. He was taken out from cornerback, where he's been a mainstay for 5-6 years now. Did a brilliant job, man, marking Ronan Murphy. And similar to on Conor Gardner, he was kept fairly quiet. So without those two lads firing alongside Flynn, they were always going to struggle for scores. And so it proved. Look, 12 points to 15. We know what the conditions were like on Saturday. Certainly, it wasn't easy for Hurling by any means, but it would have played a factor. Certainly, no question about it. But Cappy, they always looked like they were going to win the game.
Yeah,
that's kind of without ever being. They had the 5-point lead, as you mentioned there, with not long to go. But they always looked that bit better, or that bit sharper on the day. And so it proved, and they got the win to go through as group winners.
Yeah, I suppose Damien Joyce coming in as well was a big boost for them starting. Just his experience there, and he'd be an organiser out in the field. And Dolan Mallion's really added to their attack as well. But I suppose the one person who really stood out, and he often does for Cappy, is Jam Mannion. I think he scored 2 points. He did 2 points in the first half. I think he won a couple of frees, and he set up another point as well. So he was just he's an electric player when he gets going. Jesus, he would have done his inter-county ambitions no harm at all, because the hard side is kind of what suits him for Galway. Really, you know what I mean. That's when you kind of want to use him, because we've seen him try to play a few games for Galway in Walsh Cup and stuff like that, and it wouldn't be the type of ground where you'd get the best out of him. When he gets the ball in his hand, Jesus, he's one thing on his mind. It's normally head for goal, and you have to mill him or let him chap it over the bar. It's one or the other. You know what I mean. It's great to see. You know what I mean. And I suppose from a lot of people will be excited to see Cappy still in the championship, because they're kind of I know a few people wouldn't be like to hear it, but they're probably a lot of people's second favourite team. You know what I mean. There's kind of a lot of people enjoy watching them play and how they play, and people enjoy that kind of small rural parish up against some of the bigger clubs as well. But you touched on it there, as you said. I think James Garvey was a lot more assured back there as well. He wasn't pulled out from the edge of the square as nearly as much, and and that was kind of crucial there. But I suppose 2 points from Larkin, outside of Flynn, was never going to be enough. And I think it was. It's Colin Flynn that got a point and Gardner got one, but when Ronan Murphy isn't scoring for you, things are always going to be an uphill battle, and it's sad in a way, but someone has to get knocked out under the structure. We've mentioned it beforehand, and it's 3 very good teams, and only 2 can progress, really.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And look at were Arkins playing the same Cappy that played in round 2, they would have gone through. There was no question about that. This was a totally different Capitagal team. Whatever was lacking against Lochrea, I don't know. It's there's no way there was a short lack of motivation or anything like that. Or playing rivals like that, But just they were so much sharper, and their forward play was so much more crisp and accurate, and like Mannion was excellent, but the ball he was getting in was excellent too. And we know we've seen before he's certainly not the biggest man in the world, but he's able to win his own 50-50 ball, which is as a corner forward and more importantly as a midfielder or wing back out the field, striking ball in. To know your corner forward has the capability, if you're striking in maybe half looking or under a bit of pressure, you can just launch it into him, and he has a chance of winning the ball. It's a great luxury to have. So he displayed both sides of his game in that respect. The good quality ball he got in along the ground was snapped up, and he almost always did something with it, something productive when he had it in his hand. And then there were times he had to win his own hard ball, and he certainly didn't shy away from that either.
No.
But as you say, going in the couple of times we've seen him with the county as well, like for him going in there into a Galway setup, it's totally different as well, in that the players around him they obviously wouldn't know him as well as all the Captagal players do. And then if you're a Galway player coming out with a ball, you're not looking up for Jam Mannion the same way the Captagal halfbacks and midfielders would be. So that even in Jam Mannion's own head, when he sees a fella, one of his Cappy lads coming out with ball, he's immediately switched on, saying, look, these lads are going to be looking for me and I'm gone. Like he receives an awful lot of ball actually out in the half forward line, having started inside in the corner. And not necessarily the last day by any means, but certainly in county semi-finals and that over the last couple of years, he's won an awful lot of ball that way. And when he does get ball, even if he gets it out there, like for him with the pace he has, it's no trip into the goal at all. So they were excellent. And as Damien Joyce back at centre back he was outstanding. He really was brilliant. For a lad he hasn't done a lot of hurling this year, over the first couple of rounds. He slotted in there and he was absolutely brilliant. Donal Mannion as well, very good. Alan Dolan, very good. Just overall their levels just went up a couple notches, and it was too much for Larkins on the day.
Yeah, I suppose in the second game, then we'll just we'll move along to that Lochrea 316, Teen Abbey-Duniry 214. Expect a kind of result in a way. I suppose what really rubs salt in Larkins' wound is then Lochrea were pulled out of the hat as the second place team that goes into the quarter final, as if things weren't bad enough. Jesus, you'd just like, oh God Almighty, really, and you would have been. I think you're seeded as well, aren't you, to play one of the preliminary quarterfinals as well. So you have a real shot of making a semi-final there now. Provided the look of the draw goes in your favour. Lochrea lost Jamie Ryan to a kind of off the ball incident. Now I didn't hear a whole lot about it, to be honest with you, after 4 minutes. And Jesus, that would have, if that didn't open a door for Teen Abbey-Duniry, I don't know what would have, really. You know what I mean? I suppose Pádraig Breheny scored a goal in the 63rd minute, which left Lochrea only a point. They only trailed by a point. But then Shane O'Brien bagged a goal after, I think, Johnny Cohen marauded up the field and he hit the post, and O'Brien was on hand to finish. And then Mark McManus, who came on and scored 3 points from play as a substitute, he tacked on the last gas score, which was absolutely crucial now, looking back. I'm sure there was messages out in the field, it was probably a real, head scratcher for players. Jesus, have we enough done? Do we need to do more? What do we need? Do we need a goal? Do we need a point? I know from ourselves at the weekend, we probably didn't try and get as much messages on the field as we should have. And that was probably, probably has down a small bit in the end looking back. But sure, Anthony Burns, another fine out there from him again. Jesus, I think he scored 1-1, and I suppose the big problem for them now is if Ryan is missing for the quarter final, it'll be a huge blow. It's a pity, Teen Abbey-Duniry didn't really offer a lot. They were disappointing this year, really. Overall, I know they had a catalogue of wide in the first 2 games, but by the sounds of things, they never looked like beating Lochrea. I know they headed back to a point at the end, but Lochrea kind of always seemed to have them at arm's length. Lochrea now in a quarter final. If they could get Ryan,
some turnaround.
Oh, for sure.
If you look at compare themselves in Arkins after night 1 and to say where both teams would be 4 weeks later, it's incredible. Look, Jamie Ryan, to lose him after 4 minutes, to get a lad sent off after only 4 minutes, would suggest to me that he probably won't be getting his red card rescinded, because a ref doesn't send off a fella that early lightly, you know.
No.
And look at what no more than yourself, I can't comment on what did or didn't happen or why he was sent off. But just to me, you know, there was no sense of having sent off a teen lad and wanting to leaving out the scores, anything like that, you know.
No.
I'd be, you know, based on what I'm seeing there, I'd be kind of worried enough that he probably, fair chance he will be missing for that quarter final. But look, they're bringing on subs that can contribute 1-3 between two of them anyhow, you know. It's not the worst position in the world to be in for sure, you know. And look, we don't know. We'll see how preliminary quarterfinals go this weekend and what sort of a draw they could get there as well, you know. But we mentioned last week the importance of having somebody or one or a couple of people keeping tabs on what's going on in the other ground, in the other game. Like, you know, I know for ourselves, the way things went against Ardrahan, there was never any correspondence of what Athenry or Clonardale were doing in Ballinasloe, because all our focus at that stage was trying to win the game, because it was that sort of a game. So there was nothing between us, you know. Lochrea probably would have had more of an eye. Never had seen Abbey-Duniry out of the game as we saw with the late goal to bring it back to 1. But certainly, you know, surely you'd imagine there would have been a fella or two keeping an eye on things. But then when a game gets really frantic like that too, it's not too easy to have your wits about you.
No,
you know.
no.
And like, certainly, I know even from us doing Twitter updates, Lord God, it was hard enough to do it. Never mind what all these fellas are doing, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, look at it. Were they looking at what's the score app to keep tracks and things that day, or had they someone that couldn't have had a spy in the ground, I suppose? not like other years, you know. So it's actually not as easy as probably as you'd imagine to kind of keep tabs on what's going on elsewhere, you know. So look, it worked out well for them in the end. The late goal, Shane O'Brien's goal, and the pint afterwards was enough. No more than a Crofwell in Senior B Group 1, as we'll discuss later on. Just 1 pint was just enough for them, you know. And yeah, a great result for them. I think Teen Abbey-Duniry, I think they're probably just a small bit out of their depth up in Senior A. Like they were lucky to get through the group last year. No, not lucky. Look, they got through on merit, but it was a last day win over Garth that got them through. And this year they've been beaten in 3 games, with having had chances to potentially win the games, but never being able to actually go out and do it. And you know, I think probably going down scenery isn't the worst thing in the world for them. You know, in terms of if you go into a preliminary quarterfinal next year on the back of having topped the Senior B group, rather than maybe sneaking through from in the 4th position in a Senior A group, you're probably in a better headspace. Whatever about the teams you come up against or whatnot, you know. But certainly mentally, you're probably going in a better place than you would be having gone through where they did last year, you know.
That's for sure.
So yeah, I don't think it's like, you know, they played nearly the entire game with an extra man and couldn't make the most of it to get it over Lochrea, you know. So Lochrea full value for the win, and I think it worked out well for them over the week, over the following day on Sunday anyhow, you know, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And I suppose just ahead of the quarterfinal then, or well, you know, we have the preliminaries, but just on Lochrea second, I suppose you mentioned McManus there and Shane O'Brien to bring on. Like, it's not the worst case in the world to be missing Jamie Ryan. I know it's not great, like, you know, he's your talisman up there, but Neil Carey seemed to come in and slot over, you know, a few frees, which was pivotal. And he's an expert marksman as well in his own right. And, you know, sometimes it can bring him on a bit too when he's actually nailing a few frees. It can bring up his confidence, and he can, you know, from that bond, then he can pick off a few from play. And, you know, they wouldn't be, even if Ryan is missing, they still wouldn't be, you know, outsiders or anything like that to come out of a quarter final. You know, you could start McManus there, or you could slot in Shane O'Brien, or, you know, there's a few different things you could really do there. Like, you know, they've a right nice good team there, you know, and tactically they're very astute as well. I think when they were reduced to 14 men, I think they used possession very well. Killeen was sitting loose, and I think they fed it down the flanks to, like, say, Burns and the other one on the wing there. I think we've listed out Burns and Neil Carey, and they kind of attacked from the flanks, and they didn't hit they used possession well, and as you said already, they were full value for their victory, and again rubbing that salt in the Tommy Larkin's wound that they look at the draw, they're the ones who were picked out this year, and given the structure that the way it works out, that they're now into a quarter final and they don't have to play a Gart or a Lean Mellows or anyone like that. They just kind of play and say it, and they'll know their draw next weekend. They have a week to recuperate and rest, and it's been a hectic few weeks, but that extra week could be valuable for a lot of these quarterfinalists as well. You wouldn't know. So I think Paul Houben was excellent, I believe, as well. Now it's a game I haven't seen, but just from chatting to people, I think he was. Yeah. He's such a leader back there for the Missenty, really, and they have a fierce stern defence when you look through it, like Cayman Killeen, Connor Jennings, Jalen Shaughnessy, Houben, and Johnny Cohen. That's a formidable rear guard there, and nobody would want to draw them in the quarterfinals either. And they could potentially go places if things click for them. In coming up, in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. Well, we saw the quality of the movement in their attack against Capitale, and just because Jamie Ryan has been sent off, that doesn't mean any of that changes. In many respects, it gives them even more room to run into. So that's simply what they did. When they're playing, you probably start playing a shorter passing game, which they did a fair bit of in any case. It's not something that's alien to them by any means. But when you've got Paul Killeen sitting back, he's a fellow you need to bypass. There's no question about that. So if you've got the wing forwards and corner forwards and your full forward running kind of diagonal lines looking for ball out in the flanks, it's not a difficult target to hit, provided the runs are timed well and they're intelligent runs. It's not a difficult ball tip, because it doesn't actually have to be that accurate.
Yeah.
Because as the ball's moving, the forward is moving as well, so he has time to adjust his run if needs be. And then when he gets ball, those diagonal balls are very hard for a defender to deal with, so you're nearly always going to have the yard, especially with the pace those Lochrea lads have. And then when they get in their hand, there'll be another fella coming off the shoulder looking for another short pass. And yeah, I think I'd imagine that's something they use to fairly good effect the last end. It was 316 is a fair score to rack up with 14 men in the house, isn't it?
That's for sure. We'll move on to Group 2. We'll just get the dead rubber out of the way, we'll say first, because there's not a lot we can take from Clearbridge. 23 points, Turlock 16, but Turlock, one eye on the quarter final. A host of changes. Fergal Moore didn't feature at all. Conor Walsh and the two Loftuses only came on as subs. I think the kind of Matthew Keating got a run. I think he started there. He was he was wing forward, was he, or was he wing forward? Yeah, so he picked off 3 points, but I suppose from a Clearbridge point of view, TJ Brennan started centre forward, and by all accounts he was supposed to be excellent. I think he hit 5 points and 4 of them were for play, and the other was from the sideline. So if nothing else to kind of learn, maybe we could go with TJ Brennan up there next year, maybe, and he's a ball winner, he's aggressive, and something there, for a file for Nyland, we'll say, that they take a bit of the heat off him as well, and kind of create space for the likes of Kennedy and a few more. And Clearbridge will come on next year. Like, they still have the likes of Christy Brennan now, who was just in his first year as well. And these lads will develop and then mature. And I'd be very surprised if a few of them don't hit the gym hard. You know what I mean? In the next 2 years, realizing that there's a physical demands of senior hurling are there to be met, and they'll need to kind of, even if you can't make up for it in height, you can make up for it in a bit of strength and power, and create a good centre of gravity for yourself there, and lads will bounce off you. But anything, nothing really to take from the game. Turlock now really not too
Turlock did what we expected. Turlock did what we expected, in that they made 6 changes, and the changes they made were fellas that have seen game time already this year. So look, they did the right thing really, and giving those fellas chances to come in and impress, and a few of them did. Matthew Keating came on and started and scored his 3 points. So those are the kind of the headaches that Franny Ford and Joe Hesh and Cyril Donnelly, that's what they'll welcome it. It certainly doesn't make team selection easy come match week, but it's a great position to be in. So I think they used the game exactly how they should have. I think credit to Clearbridge. Look, they came out, and by all accounts they really tore into it and were brilliant the first half, especially, and built up a nice lead, which Turlock cut some bit, but they were never going to be caught really. They hurled well on the day, albeit, as we mentioned, Turlock had the job done, but those 6 fellas and a few more, like there's pressure in Turlock more to perform in games because they have the players to come in that if you're not performing, your spot's going to be gone. So there is that pressure there. So in many ways, if there was no such thing as a dead rubber, if you were that mindset wouldn't have been instilled in the Turlock players going out because they know there's pressure on them to perform every day. So I'm sure there's kind of no sense of panic or anything among the Turlock management team this week, but I'd imagine they're disappointed certainly with plenty of aspects of it, and we'll have plenty of work to do for sure over the next week or two to get fixed for a quarter final, you know.
Yeah, so in some ways it could be nearly better to lose a game like that because it shows you something.
Yeah.
Your work-ons now are there and you can clearly see them, and there's a few bits you need to improve on or whatever, or you've learned a little bit about a player here or there who could potentially start. But from that we won't stick on it because it was there was nothing really to analyze. Nothing right now. Well, in comparison to the other game, which there was huge stakes on, we'll say you were at this one. Now I only actually got to see the first half today because I was up the walls, we'll say. I saw it this evening before I had to head out. But Lee Mellows, 213, Oranmore Mary, 17 points, straight knockout contest. Cracking game by all accounts, Patrick.
Yeah, definitely the best game I've seen this year anyhow so far.
Okay.
Absolutely, really enjoyable. It was one of those games where it didn't feel like there was a crowd missing, even though there clearly was. But the sets of management teams and support and substitutes, they were so fired up at either end of the stand, you know, and then the players themselves in the field, the communication and the applauding and everything on the field was brilliant, you know. It was two teams that were just manic aggressive, and just the desire to win was savage. It was really the physicality and the intensity of it. It was brilliant, you know. There are two real quality teams, like, you know, and that, you know, we questioned last week whether, you know, Oranmore Mary's drop off in performance from the first day to the second day, what level were they at? You know, this performance to me showed that they have taken a serious step since last year, you know, and I don't think there's any fear of them dropping back to senior B any time soon. You know, was really impressed with them, really impressed. And as it came down the stretch, you know, the Mellows got 2 goals, one either side of half time, which were both sucker punches really for Oranmore Mary to take, and they went from 2 points down to 3 points up in the space of a couple of minutes, and at the start of the second half, Ty Karen got a penalty. But Oranmore Mary responded with 3 in a row to level it, with around the 3/4 mark. But from there, you know, they were level a couple of times, but Mellows stretched 2 points ahead, and they were just from there to the finish. You know, they were like the game was so tight. You could never say they were never going to be caught. But at the same time, you just felt like they're going to win this game. You know, they were just the way they closed out the game, the way they always responded. When Oranmore Mary cut it to a point, it was Mellows that went straight down the field and scored a point straight after. You know, I was really impressed with them now. Really impressed in both halves of the field. Defensively, Stephen Barrett was brilliant. He picked up Connor Hanley for a fair while, as we speculated he might. Especially given Sean McInerney was out injured with a hand injury.
Yeah,
he picked him up for most of the first half, and then the second half he went back in the corner, and Connor Hanley stayed outside. And Collins was excellent again, fullback. Jeez, he's hurling better. He's hurling every year.
He's like a fine wine. He's getting better with age, as they say. I don't think I've ever seen him hurl as well for club anyway. He was brilliant for Galway, obviously, when he was younger, but for club in particular, Jesus, he looks like he's got a new lease of life back there. And fullback, actually, he's actually improved at fullback again. He's got to another level. You know what I mean? So
and even late on, at one stage there was, I think they were getting reset. I don't know, it was for a free or that was a ball going over a sideline or whatever. Collins had been pulled out slightly to the half back line, and was it Sean Mark Hughes, I think it was, that had just fallen back in his place at fullback, and the call was put in straight away. You know, we want get Collins back in there, fullback, mark it back out to the wing where you're hurling all day. You know, they wanted Collins was the man. They wanted guarding the goal late on when Oranmore Mary were pushing for a goal, which they never materialised. Now they never looked like getting a goal late on. But the 2 goals either side of half time. Oranmore Mary had the wind in the first half, and they were 9 points to 4 ahead, and were well on top really at that stage. Now playing some great stuff. And at that stage had a great spread of scores, as we mentioned. Conor Hannafy had 2, Ross Malone, Mark Hannafy, Ronan Hannafy, and then Niall Burke had a nice few scored as well. So that a lot of different threats. And like Mellows were, as we mentioned, playing into the wind, and Ty Karen was kind of keeping them ticking over. But then a goal just before half time from a short puck out to Adrian Morrissey, who had a cracking game, the best game I've seen him play in a long time. He was brilliant under puck outs at wing forward, and just in general play, he was brilliant. He launched a long ball in right into the box, in on top of Conor Kavanagh and Alan Bannon, and broke in behind. And as any good poacher would do, Conor Hines was the first man to react. He was running in after it before the ball even hit the deck, and he ran onto it and just finished it past Rory McInerney. It was a pure poacher's goal. He did very well, and he was the fella I was really impressed with. He got an awful lot of tellings off during the game for giving away the ball needlessly, taking the wrong options, and giving away a couple of frees here and there. But he was totally out of his depth physically. He was by miles the smallest man on the field, in height wise and kind of size wise. But jeez, he didn't shy away from it one bit, and some the ball, they look no more than Jam Onion. Actually, they look for him when they get their head up and they're striking low ball in. He's always on the move, and he's always out with a couple of yards to spare over his man, and his touch is really sharp. And then he's a really good little corner forward, so that game will bring him on an awful lot, and that goal was critical, really, So they went in, could have been 5 points down at half time, ended up only being 2 down, and then the penalty after half time, which there was some debate over as to whether it was in the square or not. I haven't seen it back on the stream, but at the time I didn't really pass any remarks as to whether it was or it wasn't, because just where you are in Kenny Park, you're not that high above the field, so it's very hard to tell in any case. But there was no questioning that it was a free anyhow. For a foul. Bannon he wrestled Kavanagh down to the ground, and as I mentioned in my reports this week, they can feel aggrieved about the decision, but whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But they were kind of fortunate, and Bannon was fortunate to stay on the field, because having been on a yellow in the first half, when you wrestle forward to the ground like that, you probably aren't entitled to a second yellow. So to me, that kind of offset it anyhow. And in fairness, they responded brilliantly to get themselves back level. So they were both teams were in a position where they could have gone on and won the game, but it was Mellows that went on and did it. Yeah,
this might be something you mightn't agree with now, but I'd argue that Mellows are actually a better team now than when they actually won the county final in 2017. I just they've gone to another level again for me, and without Thomas actually being so good, they could have 3 in a row won by now. Thomas is an exceptional club team at the moment, and it's no disgrace or anything like that to be beaten by them in finals, and they've ran them pretty close. But I'd argue that since that county final win, it just kind of seems to have instill something in the group, and they now have absolute belief in themselves when they're going out. Because you mentioned there that I know or more random close set on, but you made the point that it never looked like they were going to be beaten, really either. You know what I mean? Maybe on another day, perhaps. You know what I mean? But you need a break. But they just have this ability now to win the game when it's there. We've seen it against Cappy so many times, twice in the semi-finals. You know what I mean? They just win the game. Regardless of what's thrown in front of them, they find a way now. Well, Queen is, he'll have them set up perfectly, and the players now have just great confidence in themselves, and the belief that they're a right good team, which was probably lacking for a few years in there. They didn't have the belief in themselves that they probably should have, because they're exceptionally talented bunch. You mentioned Stephen Barrett there, Collins, Angus Canlon, Conor Elwood, Jack Ford. These lads are hurlers that would make any team in the county, if not club teams in the country. They're outstanding. I suppose one point on Oran Moore is, it's a good year nonetheless for them. It's they've plenty to build on. They'll have fellas like Ruben Davitt now to step in next year, will add another dimension to their attack as well. As you said, I don't see any danger of them going down next year from senior. I think they're one of the the top maybe 6-7 teams there at the moment now. On their day, they probably didn't do themselves justice against Turlock. They're a better team than that, but just on the day it didn't. It didn't happen for them. And we've seen now Sean McInerney was playing there the last day, maybe it's a different story because he's capable of sniping a goal here or there. He poses another problem in there completely, which he'd be a big blow. But I suppose one thing I kind of just wanted to ask you about was Garage McInerney back at full back. How do you think he done there? Because that could be, I don't know, will he be there for the county now when Dahi comes back? But it's something that they have tried, Shane O'Neill, and it's. He's strong back there anyway, and you won't take him for too much, particularly in club hurling anyway. You won't take him for too many scores.
Yeah, no, actually did very well in fairness. Yeah, presumably he was back there to shut down Angus Callan. That's certainly how it came across. He was on him all day, and there was no reason from previous games as to why you'd switch himself and Shane Gagan just for that reason. To put Garrett fullback and Shane Gagan on centre back. I think he was back there to do a job on Callan, and he did. In fairness, he shut him right down. Callan got a great point straight after half time, but that aside, that's when he was on his own too. I think Garrett was involved in a previous play or something.
Okay.
But no, did a fine job, and that sort of a game was really attritional, but I like it, high quality now, don't get me wrong, but it was really attritional, and a lot of battles and scraps for possession and stuff, but a real quality game, that would have suited them, No, did a fine job there, in fairness, yeah. And just as you mentioned there on Mellows being a better team than a couple of years ago in county when they won the county final, I'd agree with you there too. And I really like what McQueen does in that he's not afraid to ever change it up, but positionally and in terms of personnel, like even Collins to go back full back this year, Connor Elwood to go back centre back, Jack Forrest centre forward. All these things, these are all kind of established players in the team, but he's always looking for a way to make them better. And so far, those changes have done that. Connor Elwood, I think Connor Elwood is a serious prospect. He's a big
savage.
man, loads of hurling. I don't know, was he in the Galway squad earlier on the year, but by God, he should definitely be in there from now on. When they get going again, I think he's a serious prospect. But yeah, no, I think that they'll take stopping again. I really think they could. It is those three themselves, Turlock and Thomas, for me, definitely, no question about it.
I'd be the same, and just kind of on that, we'll switch over to Group 3 and Thomas's Portumna, 438 to 15 points. I spoke last week here about, if it was Portumna in the same situation and Thomas's were the team flagging, you know what I mean, that Portumna would have absolutely massacred them in the same way that Thomas's really did. It was a statement of an intent, because Thomas's need to kind of lay down a marker thereafter. They were wishy-washy in the first two games. I know they got the win, and it's a sign of champions and all that, but you want to be winning games, and you want to be winning them comfortably, and you want to be showing your quality. But Jesus Christ, a 35-point win to score 438. I don't care who you're playing. To score 438 is just, it's scandalous scoring. It's it's something that I would always know they were capable of. When their forwards just click, and Darragh Burke was back and he chipped in with 1-3. But the scoring of say Conor Cooney 1-9 from play, and I think he scored 114 overall. And then Éanna Burke, just to mention on Éanna, 9 points from play. He's the sort of fella that, he just, if he gets it in his hand, it gets half a second, it's snapped over the bar. And you'd kind of be delighted for him in a way, he went under his own bit of trouble there, you know what I mean, in head of the All-Ireland final. So it's great to see him back on song, and, delivering for Thomas. It's they're a frightening proposition when things click for them. There's no attack out there that, can offer as much as them, when everyone is flowing. I think he had a array of scores. I think they had 11 different scores, some more. You've even led some, David Burke snipe 1-1 from midfield, Shane Coney 2 points from back a bit further. Even I think someone had up, Evan Duggan got the curly finger and he had 3 points scored by that point. Damien McGlynn came on and scored 3 points after Flannery had a goal by halftime. But Portumna, where do we go there? It's not a pretty sight there. You know what I mean? I think Canning was good by all accounts. I think he scored was it 4 points in play, and I think he finished with 10 overall. But Jesus is on that. I can't think of too many teams in Senior B at the moment that would succumb to that hammering. To be honest with you, I can't think of even still a lot of them would have made it. Are we reaching a point where Portumna could be a worry at Senior B now? I thought in first few zones that maybe they might have enough, but would Joe be enough to keep them up by themselves, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any point reading into it really from a Port
No.
owner perspective. I spoke to Chunky yesterday, just about see whether he'd join us this evening, but he'll be joining us for the preview show. When I messaged him initially, I said, look, if we promise to only talk about it for 60 seconds, will you join us? So we've gone over that already. So, but no, he said, look, the Port owner lads were their championship finished. I finished 2 weeks ago, and since then they haven't put any thought into Thomas's whatsoever, and that I think that's reflected in the score. I think that a lot of what they did against Cashel and Sarsfields is a lot more reflective of where they actually are, and I think they'll be fine going down Senior B next year, to be honest. So no, I wouldn't read a lot into that really from their point of view. Certainly for Thomas's, as we mentioned, yeah, Ian Burke, brilliant to see him back. Really sound lad, and brilliant hurler when the first pint or two go over the bar for him, the first shot or two, he's just he can be untouchable a lot of days in club action, and probably the timing of the issues he had there around the All Ireland a couple of years ago, it came at an off by time that he was hurling very well, and probably would have been possibly getting a chance with Galway around that time too, after falling on from the All Ireland final, so he's kind of back to square one in that regard at the minute. But look, with more performances like that, he'll certainly be getting a chance, and he's the kind of fella who would really benefit from a bit of game time in the league, which is with when your club is doing well, that you're not always blessed that opportunity either. But great to see Conor Cooney putting up a big score like that. Darragh Rourke back, yeah, signs are certainly looking good for them anyhow. That's for sure.
That's for sure. And I suppose from that we'll just move on to the other game then. Straight knockout basically. Sarsfields 3-11, Castlegar 19 points. Now I covered this one. Jesus, I thought Cashel had it, but it looked like to me that they'd done enough. 7 minutes of injury time is probably a bit controversial from a point. I didn't really see where the 7 minutes came from, to be honest with you. I think it could have perhaps been blown up beforehand. There was a couple of phases of play. I think after the Moss Mannion's foul was given and the ball was sent in, I think then it could have been given blown up. Cashel were absolutely irate. I think they were they left no feelings behind them anyway. They were, you know what I mean. They told Ian Gordon exactly what they thought, and we'll put it that way, and that's been mild. But I suppose from a Sarsfields point of view, we'll just analyse it without going into the injury time or analysing refs or stuff like that. Sarsfields took it out. They weren't great. They were middling on this show, and they'll have a lot to improve on. Kevin Cooney scored a magic goal. I think the stream missed it. If you weren't in attendance, it was an absolute cracker. He took it down in front of the stand. He soloed in and he just unleashed a bullet into the far corner. I mean, an unstoppable effort. Now it was really pity, because I think the camera work was very good for the weekend over the streaming, but it just happened to miss this glorious moment. And it was definitely one of the moments of the weekend from what I've seen anyway. It was just and up until that he had a difficult game. He was actually taken off the freeze. They were shooting into the wind first half, and they were struggling to kind of adjust to it. Really, he dropped one free short and wide, and he had another one wide, and they probably were two scoreable free. So they entrusted Niall Morrissey to come on to them, and Niall Morrissey was absolutely immaculate from the frees when he actually took them. He landed, just one in the second half. He landed. It was from inside his own 45. He just floated it over. Incredible score, but. Sarsfields kind of struggled to cope with Cash's running game. They really like to run. It was my first time now really getting a look at them close. They like to, go a short, find Neary from a puck out or someone like that, Owen Teagle, and work it through and, deliver. They really work quality ball into the forwards. As we said beforehand, they it's a pity one of the teams has to go, but I suppose from a Sarsfields point of view, they know they can improve. They can definitely improve on this performance. They were without, we mentioned in the past, Darren Scahill, Kevin Hines, Alan Ward seemed to be wearing a cast, it was just kind of one of these Cass just kind of keep the hand in place rather than a plaster of Paris or anything like that. So we don't know how long that could be out for. So, but that in a sense, I know we were saying just Cooney's one of the best sweepers in the county when he does it or when he sits back, but it kind of took a bit from their attack. I felt a small bit, and if you had Kevin Hines back there, they would have been a lot more threatening. They only scored 2-2 from play, but they will have to up the ante against the heavy hitters. From a casual point of view, Jared Farrer was lethal from place balls, and I think he chipped over 2 points in play as well. Like, I know he missed a 65 towards the end, but Jesus, it's he was against the wind was chronic, like just there at that time. It seemed to be at its strongest over the weekend. Jason O'Gorman was very impressive. Owen Teagle, Oisin Conley again, and they to be credited them, they were without Enda Kincannon and Jack Hine, who seemed to have broke his ankle, I think, as well, and he was on crutches there. So they were 2 big blows. Right. Like, if they had them 2 lads there themselves, they probably could have won it. It's a game they definitely felt they left behind. The penalty at the end, it was another absolute rocket again. Came back off the back staunch, I think, by the looks of it. Maybe Cashel had too many lads on the line for it. 8 is kind of, you're nearly falling over each other, and like I'd kind of be wondering why you'd nearly be giving lads a designated job when you've 8 there. Like, you go low if it's coming in low, or you go high, or kind of make a decision on it. One lad can get down low, whereas they were all kind of standing up big, and no, they were kind of just in each other's way, and it's hard to react quickly when you're rubbing shoulders with someone like that. But Kevin Cooney, to his credit, he'd a difficult outing, and he'd probably admit himself that. But come with the hour, come with the man, and he unleashed the rocket, and without him, Sarsfields would be gone. And I suppose it's harsh for Castle. Did you see the game yourself, or did you get a look at it on the stream, or what did you make of it?
Didn't look back at it.
No.
But like from what I've heard chatting to lads as well, like straight off the bat, like Kincannon and Coyne are worth 4 or 5 points to Castle before the game even starts. So it's a huge loss. It's unknown how big a loss that is to them, really. We mentioned Joseph Cooney going back 6, which we were kind of advocating in many ways last week, but then because we thought we said that they're not short up front, but going on what you say, we saw at the weekend, maybe there are doubts there, because 3 of the starting forwards didn't score from play, and of the rest of them, Kevin Cooney got the goal from play, so did Alex Kinnear, and Morrissey got a point from play. Like, it's not much of a return from your attack, really. Like,
No.
So maybe like that's to me that's their biggest issue going forward. Jeffrey Lawless came on, at half time, didn't really make an impact by the looks of it. A lot of the scores they got against Portumur were false, and that's they all came when Portumur were down 2 men. So to me that looks to be the issue that they have to iron out, even though like they've more talent up there this year than they've had the last couple of years with Kinnear and Mark O'Regan in his second year now, but they were in a position where they could leave Niall Morrissey on the bench in round 1. That's something they've never done for as far back as I can remember, before the county final win anyhow. I think Castlegar, no more than Arkans, they're desperately unlucky not to be in the championship. Castlegar could be top of the group and straight into the quarter final just as easily as where they're at now. And a lot of it not so much fault of their own, but I suppose a bit of inexperience, maybe not to close out the game towards the end. And as you mentioned, with maybe too many lads on the line, does it kind of, when the shots come in, you're kind of leave it to the fella beside me, maybe, that there's an element of that there, certainly. If it's not coming straight at you, maybe you're not going to bother because there's a fella there beside you that he's probably going to stop it. But then eventually, in the end, no one stops it, and they're there staring down the barrel. And as soon as the ball went in the back of the net, they didn't even have a chance to recover. It was blown up straight away. Which is it's very harsh on them for sure. But look, I think what was there? Kevin Kane, Killian Callahan, the inside line.
Yeah,
Kevin Kane was the man you picked for the job last week to come in.
Yeah.
How did that work?
He had a difficult kind of afternoon. He was on Darren Morrissey, and sure, Darren Morrissey's really classy kind of hurler. Like, he didn't have the space. Like, it seemed to be that Sarsfields designated Darren Morrissey to kind of look after him, and He was quiet now, to be honest with you. But I suppose they probably, without Kine and Kilkenny, they didn't have a whole lot of options either, really, to choose from. They were good though. I must say that the 7 defender system really suits them. It just kind of works with the players. The players that can carry ball from deep. Neary's a fine hurler now, and Donald Barry's able to carry it, and you have they seem to be very comfortable on the ball when they receive it now for defenders. You can tell they have a lot of work put into it. I definitely preparation has been good. It'll be interesting to see now, like, will Fergal Lynch be back with them next year, because they've a lot of positives to take from this year, but you kind of want a second year really to kind of get the your stamp of the system, and lads now will be 100% aware next year when they come back of what's expected for them when they're on restarts, or when they're defending against the opposition, where lads are going to be stationed and stuff like that. So I'd like to see them give it a rattle extra, and you'd hope that that group can stay together, and maybe Fergal Lynch might come back again and give it another rattle, because they're a good team, and it's disappointing for them to go in a way, like, but I suppose at the end of the day they didn't see it out, and that'll have been a worry as well. And we can cry all you want about the 7 minutes, but sometimes you have to bait. It's a terrible thing, and I'm not saying this against Liam Gordon, but you have to bait the referee as well if he's not, kind of flagging the 50-50s your way. Sometimes you just have to go out and say, no matter what he gives us, we're going to have to bait it regardless. And they just didn't see it out really, which is disappointing. But you know what, there are plenty of good young players there. Like they've Simon Thomas, Neary, Mark Gill. I was very impressed with Jason O'Gorman in midfield. He was everywhere. He was excellent. Looks a real prospect. Oisin Connolly, we mentioned before, Killian Callahan. They have a nice young spine there with a mix of experience in the likes of Cathal Ryan, Brian Hartnett, Tomas Mannion, and sure, like Farrer is, he's such class. Like it's just, you could watch him just strike ball all day. Like it's worth the price of admission just watching him stroke over balls. It doesn't really, it doesn't matter what. Like he just needs that small bit of space. Like and I suppose at the end of the day, Sarsfields are through. Cashel, they'll be, it'll be sore for the weeks leading up now as the championship kind of progresses out. But I suppose it's a bit of motivation for them next year, to come back again. And you'd hope Fergal Lynch might be involved with them again next year, or if not, they can bring in someone who will be willing to work a similar kind of system. Because, as I said before, it seems to suit them, and the players have the attributes there that they can, they can build upon it. And they're a good team, and Sarsfield will definitely, just on Sarsfield second, they will need to improve considerably. Like I'd fear for them against any of those 4 teams in the quarterfinals if they do actually come through. You wouldn't fancy them to overcome them on that display. But again, they showed what they're capable of against Thomas's, and they've an astute manager there in Eamon Cleary and the management team there, and they can definitely improve. They know they can improve, but as you said, score some play are an issue. But if you had Alan Ward back and you'd Kevin Hines there to start in at 6 to push Joseph Cooney up, you're instantly giving up the string to your bow, I suppose. That's heartbreaking defeat for Cashel, but sure, these are the swings of sport. We know them ourselves. It's the way things goes. But on that, I suppose we'll move on to Senior B Group 1. Another more drama, as if we didn't have enough already between, like not in terms of the games themselves, which were pretty much there were foregone conclusions with maybe 10-15 minutes to go, or not 10-15 minutes to go, not the Garth one, should I say, but there were foregone conclusions with 5 minutes to go. But both teams were battling against the scoreboard, and there was mixed messages coming around, and you could hear Garth lads. I was at the Garth game myself now, and you could hear roaring out, we need 2 points, we need 3 points, we need 4 points. But at the end of the day, Adam Clark got a late goal for Cromwell, and that's the difference. It tied them on blow, plus 25 scoring difference, and Cromwell were much better off than in the scores for. They just have a frightening attack, and probably it's serious. Like for a Senior B team like that, that's not a Senior B attack. I can tell you that much. The way they rack up like the scores. But I just tackled the Gort game first. Gort to Ballinderreen. Gort 220, Ballinderreen 11 points. Incredibly, Ballinderreen were only a point. They were only a point down with when the final water break came, and whatever happened, Gort just built up a head of steam, and they hit 111 to a point against Ballinderreen. Now Ballinderreen had only 2 second half points, but they were very much in the contest. They were well up for. They were saying that you could hear the management team delivering messages that we're going to give it to these lads, and we're going to make them think with every tackle. And Ballindurry started electrically. They were Ryan was so impressive in their first 15 minutes. He stroked over 2 points in play and a sideline cut, and Jesus Almighty, he was outstanding. Kevin Lane set in a sweeper, so they played a 2-man inside line, and Kevin Lane, and he picked, like, the Gort really struggled with that. They didn't really know how, their delivery wasn't good, and the forwards weren't getting the quality of ball that they're. And again, it was probably a slow start, but it's become a characteristic of Gart's play so far this championship. There was a slow start. They relied on Aidan Helleber to keep them ticking over from scores, and they didn't score from play. But Jesus, this final flurry, Mike Mullins kind of got a goal early in the second half, which kind of eradicated the Ballindurry advantage they built up. And Mike Mullins, I must say, was very impressive. Like, he only got a goal, but he was back sitting under a lot of puck outs, and geez, he picked off a couple of real, important puck outs. I thought he was outstanding. Richie Cummins hit 1-4. He's always capable of that. But a player like probably Paddy Cummins is one of the players that have probably impressed me most from Gort over the championship so far. He's a real find for them. Like, he can do everything. He can score. He can deliver quality ball in. Like, he's just another dimension. Gort started Hearts, which would probably be a big story. But something twinged early on in the hamstring. I'd say it seemed to be looked like the hamstring, and he was just. In fairness to him, you could tell it was gone, but he managed to last 40 minutes. But he was very ineffectual. They pushed him in full forward after it went, but Robbie Lane went on him, but he couldn't move at all. Like, so it's probably when that they removed Hart from the equation. Like, it's crazy having a player like that, to be able to remove. And they trust on who replaced him again. Sorry, now. Paul Killalay came on, and from there on, they just, they hit the afterburners and they just blitzed Ballindurry. Like, the positive signs would be the 1-11. It's a frightening score in 10 plus minutes, maybe a little over than that. But yeah, they're very unlucky not to be hurling Senior A next year as well. But I suppose these are the swings.
I mean, like, with 10 minutes to go, like, I couldn't see any issue for Crowell whatsoever. Like, I thought, like, I knew Gort were going to win the game. It was just Ballindurry weren't able to score. Like, and Gort had a couple point lead. They were going to win the game, but I couldn't envisage what was going to happen over the next 2 minutes. And even at first, when they tagged on the first few points of the guy, they're pulling away a bit here. But still, I never thought Crowell were threatened. And next thing, the Richie Cummins goal was the one that really kind of got the feeling going. Oh, geez, maybe this is actually on here, Yeah. And you could see it very clearly on the stream as well as the game went on. When they got frees and stuff, they look over the sideline always, and that happened. What do we need? Which was good to see that they were keeping tabs and everything in the stadium in that regard, and it was through no fault of their own that they didn't manage to get through. It was a last gasp goal for Crowell, as we'll touch on in a minute, that caught them, So, like, a brilliant performance from Gort, you have to say. Like when you consider Crowell were playing a team that were already gearing up for relegation in a couple of weeks' time, whereas Gort were playing a team that were playing to go through. Savage impressive. I think fair to say the first half is what really cost Ballindurry. They were resilient in the second half, and they made life difficult for Gort, even after conceding the early goal in the second half to Mike Mullins, which I was a brilliant goal in fairness, and Stream caught it lovely in that he'd half it came from a line ball in, and he was half turning when he caught it. He caught it down kind of around his waist, or even down his knees nearly was, I'd say. But he was half turning just as he caught it. So he was gone early, and he finished it very well. It was a great goal in fairness.
Great goal, yeah.
And as you mentioned, he was brilliant under the high ball both on their own puckouts and on Ballindurry puckouts as well in at times in the first half, So yeah, no, really impressed with Gort, I have to say, for sure. A brilliant draw with themselves Mellows now this weekend. It would be a cracking game, but no, it's fair to say the first half is what cost Ballindurry, and I thought, the couple of points lead they had at half time was 5 points they were up at half time.
I think it was around that. Yeah.
It was never. It was well at the time. You couldn't say it was never going to be enough. It was just because of what they had left out there. You kind of felt, Jesus, they're surely going to rue these, and so it proved was they missed about 4 frees in the first half for sure. Which it was they could never afford to do that. and so it proved. Shane Larkin was brilliant for them in the second half. In fairness, when he went in full forward, I say he could have been struggling with injury as well. That was his first game back this year, so he could have been struggling a bit as well. But he did excellently in there. And as you say, at the time, starting Hart was the right decision for Gort to make, and now it's probably done more harm than good. But look, hindsight is 2020, as we all know. At the time, which was a knockout game of hurling basically, and they needed their star man out there, so you couldn't say worse than to the management team or for Hart for having a go at it. But hamstrings are and probably they're a curse in terms of you just don't know when they're right. I know for a fact he'll have been doing any God's amount of running the last number of weeks and will have felt nigh on 100%. But then when you go out and you do hurling running, it's totally different. I know myself. I did my hamstring last year, and same thing. Felt A1 doing a lot of running, and then when it came to even doing a warm up on match day, I knew I wasn't right. So
yeah.
You just hope that doesn't cost Hart much more time. You'd love to see him able to go out against Mellows this weekend, but I'm not so sure you will, to be honest.
No, but considering how he was moving towards it, initially he seemed to be moving pretty much okay. Like I think he got on a couple of balls early on, but there was one right in front of the stand he went for, and he just pulled up and he went down stretching straight away, and you knew he was in bother. Which is a pity because he's a player you'd actually want to, he's a player that you really enjoy watching at club hurling. He's kind of he's all action, and he's capable of taking a score, and he's as strong as a boat as well. Like, cause even on the hamstring thing, you can be sure no one looks after themselves better than Aidan Hart. Like he's, you know what I mean? He's a professional down to the T. You just know it from him, and just the way he looks after, his body and everything like that. It's just, as you said, it's just one of these injuries that can take a bit longer than you usually. You usually assume to heal, but it's. I couldn't really put my finger on the collapse though. Afterwards, it's a bit disappointing from Bellinger. I mean, it was just a complete collapse, really. And Gort, I suppose they knew it was over at that point, really, and the heads dropped, and But Gort, Jesus, when they smelled blood, they absolutely, they were like hyenas. They were picking off points from everywhere. Like Jack Grealish sauntered up and he scored a cracking point from long distance. Jason O'Donoghue as well. Greg Leddy shot 3 late on. Cummins went to town.
It's
a great, it's like if they could click like that against Mellows. Now we'll keep it for the preview show, but you'd never know, and they'll have plenty of revenge in their mind from that county final defeat as well. You'd never know. I suppose we'll just move on to the second one then. Another race against the scoreboard, really, or a battle against the scoreboard. Craughwell 5-22, Kinvara 2-13. We touched on it already. Adam Clark's late goal, probably the difference. But Craughwell they racked up some huge scores throughout the championship. Phenomenal score. Now I suppose there is a bit of worry at the opposite end, all right, for them, that they have conceded. But at the end of the day, it's their formidable attack that kind of got them through in the end. I suppose we touched on it last week. We were wondering whether Horn would track wheeling, and Mark Horn, whether he would track wheeling, and it seemed to be that he did. I suppose another aspect would be every Craughwell player from midfield scored, up like they had, like even just touching on it here, Jamie Ryan with 3 points, Patrick Monaghan, who was supposed to be absolutely outstanding, I think he hit 2-2. Tom Monaghan 1-3, Niall Healy 1-10, Shane Dolan 2 points. Like it's a phenomenal attack on paper. Like it'd be an attack that on its day could absolutely blitz you, and you could be hit with a blitzkrieg, we'll say, early on, that you might never recover from, and Craughwell could keep you at arm's in for the rest of the game. I suppose they're deservedly back in senior A, really, aren't they? They probably, I mean, maybe a slight bit better than Gort, maybe just for the scoring alone. They're, maybe
in that aspect, certainly they are, but defensively they probably aren't as good as Gort, So
that's true.
If they were to play again, which comes out on top, you'd have to see. But very, very, very impressive for sure. Again, worth noting, like Kinvara put up a fine score. In fairness to them, for credit for that. And when they had nothing to play for, and they're, as we mentioned already, their eyes are solely on relegation now at this stage. So put up a fine score, which is something they'll take with them. Craughwell didn't play Adrian Prendergast, so maybe a slight niggle there that they didn't bother risking him.
Imagine, I totally forgot that he wasn't there. Yeah. Jesus Christ, that's probably another 4 or 5 pints there alone that might have additional pints that might have came,
Yeah. So like and as you say, if you said beforehand Crawford were going to score 522, you wouldn't have said it's beyond the realms of possibility. But what you would have said is that they will absolutely saunter to top spot in the group. But it didn't turn out that way at all. I suppose partly because they conceded a fairly substantial score themselves, and then with what Gort did in the last few minutes against Ballinderrine, but the late goal, as we mentioned, no more than kind of what Lochrea did against Abbey-Duniry, the late goal made all the difference. And defensively certainly there's issues to iron out there. You have to remember those Crawford lads a lot of them would have been used to playing with a sweeper for a lot of years as well, and they're getting away from that now, and they're playing really, really positive hurling. And I think that's where you're going to get the best out of them playing like that, But as a defender too, there's more responsibility on you now to kind of take care of your corner. You don't have that extra bit of cover that they would have had in previous years, So I suppose it's the case of just adapting to that and growing with it every game as well, So when there's more pressure on in a knockout game, I think like we saw the first day against Gort, there was big pressure in that game. I think you'll see a better defensive shift from them as well. But certainly back up Senior A, the 2 years down Senior B hasn't done them any harm in the wide earthly world, And I think that they'll be competing for top honours in Senior A next year, I think, again.
Yeah, just on Kinvara then a second. I suppose the scoreline it's probably it's not great looking either, but it was a very tough group they were drawn in fairness to them. Like, they're probably two teams that probably were the favourites literally to go up if they were drawn in separate groups in Gort and Crowell, and their first game against Ballinderrine was always going to be absolutely pivotal, and I suppose they didn't deliver. It was their first game back in senior action as well, and the nerves will be there, and it's probably two teams that know them very well as well. They would have they'd be very familiar players coming up. I suppose you probably don't want to touch too much on them, when you be facing them yourselves, and which is understandable from your point of view. Like, so there'll be they won't be sticking your comments to the dressing room or anything like that, which is you're probably fair enough to be doing as well. Or will they? I know I'm only messing, but
no,
it's they've plenty to build on. If they could just they can get a result now, and this is their county final this year now. This relegation playoff now. They'll have two county finals to it, and if they can somehow get a victory in one of them, it'll be a fantastic year for them to stay up, because I'd imagine they would have been red hot favourites to go down again. Probably maybe. Which is given the squad, and the squad they have a few elder statesmen, will say, but they have a lot of young players that have been afforded senior game time as well, and they'll develop and they'll grow into it as well. So it's not the end of the world for them. As I said, now they've two massive games. If they can probably win one, you might be all right. Like, it might be enough. So. And with Whelan in the ranks, you know what I mean. He'll relish this challenge now. It seems to be he's a man for the big day for them, really. And he'll probably get maybe a bit more space, perhaps, against no offense to yourselves, against yourselves and Kilnadine. Well, there's a fine midfielder there that might be able to slot back in, and I'm you know what I mean.
It never went too well for me in school whenever I had to go up against them. But
yeah, geez, I wouldn't. I tell you, there's inter-county players that have had the same experience as you. You know what I mean. So, he'll relish that battle if. As well. It's terrible. We keep going on about him, it's hard not to, because Kinvara rely on him so much, and he's so, he's their talisman there, and he's so important for them. And if he can deliver, you'd give them every chance. You know what I mean? If he can just find, it's terrible to say. I got to say this now, but he'll really enjoy playing against Kilnadine Leitrim in particular, because what I've been hearing over the weekend, they coughed up a host of goal scoring chances. I know we'll touch on it later, but I think they coughed up maybe 7 goal scoring opportunities alone against Pearses, and Pearses were missing a few as well. So, like, if you have a forward there of Whelan's quality going in, it's a worry. I won't even mention your match until it comes around. I'll have a go and analyse it then. But yeah, look, there's 2 games there for them to win now, and they'll fancy their chances if nothing else. You know what I mean? So we'll leave it at that. We won't put you under too much pressure yet. You plenty to. We'll leave it for the preview shows yet. So just moving on then to, I suppose, Group 2. This is your group here, Patrick. I suppose we'll start with the Athenry-Killimor Daly game. Athenry 23 points, Killimor Daly 216. From, kind of reports and stuff like that, I don't know what Killimor Daly overly bothered about it, really. It's an important result for Athenry all the same. Cemented their senior status without having to endure the relegation battle, which is key. After they drew with G and they lost with Ardrahan, it looked like they might have been in a bit of bother, but they kind of dug it out. And I suppose that man Keane Burke again was to the fore, wasn't he? I think what did he finish with? He finished with
13.
He finished with 13 points, should I say, 11 frees, and Ronan Hardiman picked off 3 points and Paddy Rabbit picked off 2. Well, if you were saying something like that would have happened beforehand, you would have felt that they would have had a chance. I suppose, to be honest, Killimor Daly probably had one eye on what's coming up. They had everything else done. Revenge wasn't probably a whole pile on their mind. They probably had the chances, to win it as well. But I think Athenry they were strong down the home stretch, I believe, and I think they shot, was it maybe 6 out of 7 points for a spell, maybe down towards the end, and that kind of turned us the way. Probably, it's probably worth ranking. We'll keep it for the preview show that they might have probably too much for Mulla still, although their consistency is a problem for them really over the last few years, and you just don't know. As we've alluded to before, that you just don't know where we stand when Killimor Daly take the field. They could beat the senior A team one day, but then they could struggle in a game where they're expected to win. Did you have any? I suppose it's hard to get a look at it, but kind of just reading reports. What were your thoughts on it, really?
Yeah, I mean, like for a team like Athenry that would have had big expectations at the start of the year, and things had gone fairly pear-shaped the first 2 days, fair to say, it would have been very easy to collapse altogether at that stage and go down to Killimor Daly, who, I'm sure they weren't 100% going at it, but they certainly weren't going out to lie down against Athenry. There's no way they'd be doing that, So there was a game to win there, and Killimor Daly were in winning positions at late stages, 12 to 16 points they were up at one stage after the second goal, so the pressure's on Athenry there again, and they could have caved and let Killimor Daly go on and win their 3 games and top the group, and no one would really have said much of a word to Athenry, but they battled on and got a win, which had we got over the line against Ardrahan would have put them through, So I think they deserve a fair bit of credit, like as you mentioned, Ron Hardiman put up 3 points, hadn't gone particularly well the first 2 days. A lad with plenty of potential, but so that's good to see. Keane Burke, he's again, we know he's been producing the goods for them. Every day he's accounted for over 50% of their total tally over the 3 games. So I think it'll be a winter of reflection in many ways for Athenry, but certainly a very positive note for them to finish out on. For Killimor Daly, I don't think that obviously they're not going to like you losing to Athenry. Why would you? We would never like losing to Gart, or definitely not Ardrahan anyway.
No, sure.
But you never like losing to rivals like that, But they have bigger fish to fry, as we know. So I think it'll be parked fairly quickly. It already has been, and just all eyes on Mulla for them this week for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose just from an Athenry perspective, because it's probably the last time we'll be looking at them this year. Like they've great potential there. Like there's so many still lads that are just from that under-21 A-winning team last year. Like you go through it there's so many lads that are still developing and maturing as senior hurlers, and it is a step up no matter, it's a massive step up no matter what way you look at it, stepping up from an under-21A to a senior competition. Another year under their belt, they've plenty of scope for improvement, and we know they've quality. Like, you know what I mean? We know they've ample amount of quality all over the field. It's just a matter now, maybe just getting a bit of consistency and getting the heads down when training starts next year, and really making a go of it, because they pushed Tommy Larkins. They gave Killimor Daly obviously a heighten last year, and then they pushed Tommy Larkins for a good long spell in Lochrea in the preliminary quarter final, I think, but they ultimately came up short. But there's plenty of potential there now. It's just a matter of them, the lads getting the heads down, putting the work in now from next year on, and what will be. But they can definitely improve on where they stand this year. I suppose we'll move on to year game. I suppose you were just the scoreline first. Ardrahan 12 points, Beha 10. It was just kind of like, I haven't seen it, but just from the notes, it seems to be you were in a good position at half time. I think it was Ardrahan had played with the wind, 6 points to 5. You would have been delighted with that. It was a great position because I'd imagine the wind was fairly strong. Was it in Colossal? Was it? Yeah.
It wasn't Colossal, but it was very strong. All right, it was worth on a normal day. You say it was worth a nice 2 scores. Not the way this game turned out. It was worth nothing to either team. But it forced us to which, was kind of not normal enough thing to do considering what we were playing against, and had played an awful lot of short puck outs, which went well, to be fair. Like, there was one hiccup in the second half where Tanyan intercepted one and went through on goal, and in fairness to Snoopy and goals, he made a brilliant save 1-on-1 to keep us in it at the time. It was a brilliant save. So, but apart from that, they worked very well for us. 6-5 down at half time. Yeah, we got some, like, of our 10 points, 8 of them from play, like, which is a good percentage. While the score isn't particularly high, but it's a good percentage of scores from play, and we got some really nice scores in the first half. It was kind of a case of having plenty of bodies back and then hitting when when an opportunity came to strike fast and strike hard, and we as I said, in a great spot at half time for sure. And even we knew not to. It wasn't like we were expecting to go out and win handy in the second half just because we had the win, because we all know it doesn't work like that. So I think we went in after the third quarter, 8 points apiece, and we're still happy enough, how things were going. But critically, from our point of view and from Ardrahan's point of view, we never went ahead, which psychologically would have been worth a lot. And then Kevin Keegan got sent off on a second yellow card when we were 9-8 down at the time, and then they went 10-8 up from that, with about 10 minutes to go. So that was critical at the time, but we didn't hurl very well in the second half. Like, both teams played better against the wind, made the most of their opportunities, and made life very difficult for the opposition when they did have the wind helping them. So it was kind of, the first half mirrored the second half in many ways. Just Ardrahan managed to tag on a point more in each half than we did. We levelled it at 10 apiece, and then Owen O'Donnell got a great point, kind of over on the sideline, and then they got a 65 then to win it with nearly the last puck of the game. So yeah, it's one kind of it was very disappointing in that, after losing to Clearbridge, you were like, going back to Shane, you're like, look, we were beaten by a better team in the day, no clams about it, whereas there was nothing between ourselves and Ardrahan. So that's kind of what's frustrating about it. And then especially when we were the ones with kind of the incentive to go after the game and kind of reel the point in and go ahead, and then make them do something very good to come back and catch us, but we never managed to do that, sadly.
Yeah, just on the notes there, Evan Hunter had a chance late on as well, which Kieran Callan said. Like, I suppose one thing just on that is Kieran Callan is one of the best goalkeepers across the county in the last, I'd say decade. Like, he's probably a player that's often overlooked in Ardrahan, really. I'd be a huge fan of him. Like, really, he's probably a real modern kind of goalkeeper. He was even before his time for a lot of it, but I suppose that's a critical one. But you did nullify Keenan Fahy, which would have been a goal for you from the outset. How did that come about, or who did you kind of have tagging him, or how did you work it?
Well, it started with Ado was on him. Adrian Towie was on him.
Yeah.
He was struggling a bit with injury, so he went off him. I think it was Tommy McEwan was on him, I think, for a lot of it. And then in the first half, anyhow, in the second half, it kind of changed a bit. But yeah, no, they did very well. I'm sure he didn't score. He's the top scorer from playing the championship prior to last weekend, and he didn't score. So if you said at the start of the game that he wasn't going to score and Ardrahan were going to score 12 points, you'd have said, "Cheers, we're in there, lads," But
Yeah,
sadly not. So from that aspect, yeah, it did very like we've done that in a few games now. Keane Burke scored a point from play against us. Kilkenny got the goal, but they had another man in Brian Burke that day, that we didn't manage to shackle, But we've done that a few days we've gone out. We've done quite well on kind of opposition's marquee forwards.
okay.
It's just not putting the scores over the other, and that's been our bother. We missed a couple of frees that Rory would have been disappointed with, which were important enough at the time, And then Hunty missed the chance at the end. Didn't strike it as clean as he would have liked. It was a good save. It wasn't.
Okay.
It was a good save. It wasn't a great save, as Eamon Dunphy would say.
Yeah. Fine impression.
It was a good save in fairness to him, and at the time, if we'd scored, we probably would have held on for the win. Which, as it turns out, wouldn't have put us through, but it would have saved us at least, But look, if we it's great to have 2 more games to look forward to,
well, I tell you now, I can tell you, I'm delighted we don't have 2 more games to look forward to from an intermediate point of view. But I wouldn't. But anyway, we will leave it at that. I suppose just finally, just a kind of a word on Ross Albertini. Like by the looks of it, he picked off 3 points to play, and just from the report I read, he was apparently very good from an Ardrahan perspective. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, I don't know who had midfielders into Markham now. I don't know, but no, he got I think he got 2 in the first half and one in the second. The one in the second was straight after half time, which was important in that it put them 2 ahead straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like I mentioned week 1 he was taken off, and I mentioned he's a fair hurler, and it was surprising at the time to see him taken off, having had little impact on the game, but kind of the 2 games since he's improved a lot. Yeah, he was very good the last time, in fairness, and is a very good hurler. No question about that anyhow.
Yeah, well, I suppose if nothing else, your detail now anyway. It's fairly simple, 2 no more than Canberra, 2 huge games, 2 county finals in a sense, but it'll be a real dogfight, but sure, what's coming up anyway. Just on to Group 3, then we'll move along. I suppose I was at the first one. We'll trade off with the one for the Senior A promotion. Ahaska digging it out of the fire against Mulla. Ahaska 315, Mulla 118. Just incredible rate there. It was great to be there to witness it. I must say, I will say it's just shocking at the moment that a few spectators can't be in to witness this, because this would have been a historic moment for Ahaska Fona's in their history. It's just that there was no one there. I know there's probably people tuning in on stream or whatever, but Jesus, not the same. No more than you mentioned early on about both sets of substitutes and panel members being very vocal. They were both exceptionally vocal throughout, but it created a good atmosphere and a good tempo to the game. Haskafona, they racked up 17 wides throughout the course of the contest, so it looked like they'd shot themselves in the foot. John Finnerty gold in the early stages, which gave them a 1-1 to 3 points lead, I think, and that kind of was the first time they kind of got their noses in front. And I think for the restart, then it was picked off, and Mark Kelly, who was exceptional at full forward. I was really impressed with him. He from frees and from play, he kind of, when the chips were down and the pressure was on, he got the scores that kind of kept them going. Now, no more than a few other lads, they had a couple of absolutely shocking wides. And if you said that Haskafona would have hit 17 wides at the start, you'd have said there's a chance they're going to win this game. But they somehow managed it. I suppose to close the first half, there was nothing really in it coming up to half time, but then Mulla hit an absolute purple patch. They scored 1-6 without reply, leading into the break, which opened up a 7-point interval lead for them. Davy Glennon was just this 10 minutes spell. He was, oh my God, he was absolutely everywhere. They had Owen Delaney on him first, and he caused no end of bother. And they had switched Blehy out of him, but it made no difference. He was catching puck outs. He was scoring points on the run, without taking his foot off the gas, which is a real skill that many people aren't able to do. They have to steady themselves before hitting it. But it didn't break stride, just kind of flicked it over the bar from, out near the sideline. Dervin got their goal. Cahill Dervin, he got their all important goal there. Very composed finish. It was a Glennon delivery in that wasn't dealt with by the Haskafona keeper, and Dervin used all his experience. He sidestepped in and kind of jinked his way around and created the space and made no mistake with the finish. Kevin Ward, to his credit, like we've given him credit here in the past about being, very, well clued in manager. He, shuffled the deck. He moved the pieces around on the chessboard. He brought on Luke Cosgrove from the bench. He went full back. Owen Naughton. Now, I must say, Owen Naughton he was outstanding, I thought, from just general play. He mightn't be the most stylish hurler, but Jesus, he's, he got under a lot of high ball. He fielded a couple of balls there in the end. He broke them for himself, and they were absolutely crucial, at keeping the pressure in and keeping Mullagh pinned back. He went to midfield. That moved Stephen Kelly, the fullback, out on David Glennon, and he done an exceptional job. It was very funny at the start. One of the key matchups would have been Ronan Glennon was on Cahill Mannion, and he was so preoccupied with Cahill Mannion that that Mullagh only had Cahill went in wing forward for the throw in. That Mullagh only put one man in for the throw in. They were that preoccupied with Cahill Mannion. It was my first time ever seeing it. I was absolutely, it just goes to show. But or should I say, Ronan Glennon scored 4 unbelievable frees throughout, which looked like it for a point it might have done them enough, but come at the hour, come at the main, Pádraig Mannion was on hand to finish to the net. He kind of a batted finish late on, which drew them level, and then Niall Glynn, who kind of made a real impact when he came off the bench. He's a former county minor, I think, wasn't he? Or wasn't he on the squad there for a while?
He was on the
Celtic Challenge.
Extended minor squad, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So he came on, and it was his initial shot that was blocked that fell to Pádraig, and then a long ball came in over the top, and it just it broke in past Pádraig and 2 Mullagh defenders, and he was on hand, and he kind of just flicked it to the net, and Jesus, there was delirium. It was a real kind of nice moment, for a small rural club. Now Mullagh weren't helped. They lost. In fairness to them, they lost 3 defenders to injury, which is worrying ahead of coming up ahead of the preliminary quarterfinals. They lost Johnny Rafferty. Campion, it's Eddie Campion, isn't it? And they lost Kevin Briscoe. So they probably wouldn't, in fairness to them, and it's no disrespect to the lads coming on, but they probably wouldn't have been of the same calibre or experience as the lads that were on there. And, a Hesker punished them when it came around. But just, it was a cracker of a game, a cracker of an atmosphere. It's probably 2 scrappy goals for a finish, but Haskafona won't give a damn, and they're senior A next year, and it's another year. These young players that they have, because they've so many young players, and they'll build upon that now, and they'll probably look at they'll relish the challenge of senior A next year. Now it might be tough going for them, but they can definitely improve on this again, and build upon it. And you'd never know. You happened to tune on the stream, was it? What did you make of it yourself?
I watched it all. Watched it all. Enjoyable game. Look, those. I don't think Mullagh can have any complaints. They were caught for 2 late goals for sure, but the 17 wides tells its own story. They were the better team comfortably, in my opinion. Mullagh for that spell before half time were brilliant, and Haskell were totally getting out of the game. But that aside, Haskell were the better team, no question about it. I when I was thinking back about it afterwards, I was very happy for Haskell in a lot of ways, because they're a team we've played the last couple of years, and they were on the opposite end of the result last year against us, in that we caught them at the death with a brilliant goal as it was, but a rotten goal for them to concede, which cost them the game. A game they deserved to win. Probably haven't been the better team for a lot of it too. We were very good in the second half, all right, but kind of karma coming around to them in the right sort of way, which was great to see. And as I said, full value for it. We speculated as to, I think Owen Delaney and Stephen Kelly were kind of the 2 fellas we picked that probably would take up marking duties on Davy Glenn, and so it proved. And Stephen Kelly was the man that was able to kind of put the shackles on him to some degree. But when they got it back to, Mullagh stretched it out to 4 or 5 points towards the end.
Yeah.
With a couple of right good scores, and at that point, you kind of looked at it and said, Jesus, Hasker's chance is kind of gone here. They've spurned so many chances now. Mullagh after grabbing the game here again and kicking on, and like Mulla hurled well. Like in fairness, you know, I wouldn't say that they hurled poorly by any means, but Ask were the better side. But when they went those couple of points ahead, I said, "Geez, I think we'll do here. I think my weekend's predictions are off to a mighty start." But then, so you got the nose in front.
There was fellas quick to tell
goals.
you on Twitter as well afterwards.
Yeah.
They weren't logging on, so fair play to you lads. Keep them in check there.
But yeah, no, I stick to Hurling. You stick to the predictions. That'll do. We keep it that
way. I'd stay back in the favourites. Yeah.
The first goal, or Hasker's second goal, would say like they'll be the Paddy Hardiman will certainly be very disappointed with it. It was a weird sort of a shot. I don't know, did he mean to do what he did, or did he half miss hit it? It was kind of floated in over and seemed to be kind of topspin on it. So
yeah,
I don't know, was the ball he could maybe have caught, or certainly batted it kind of more up to the side than what he did. But Pádraig finished it very well, in fairness to him. And actually, Niall Glynn's finish for the third goal was a brilliant finish, I thought.
Brilliant, yeah.
Very, very intelligent, and geez, he got a great contact on it, you know. And yeah, I think it was the right result. I think, and probably the fair result, even though a harsh way for Mulla to lose it. But in reality, I think Mulla in many ways are probably better off in Senior A myself. I think that they'd struggle if they went up Senior A, to be honest. So look, I think disappointment obviously, but you know, like really for these teams, this weekend was again the priority. I think for Asker, it probably meant that bit more to go up. You know,
yeah.
But so now how they get on up there, we won't even worry about it yet. It's an awful long way away, but no, brilliant shaving for them, and all credit to them.
Absolutely. Cracking game, as we said. Just pity there was no one there to witness it, but I suppose circumstances are like that at the moment. Just in the other game, there wasn't promotion or anything at the stake, but there was huge stakes as well. The winner,
a lot more.
The winner secured safety. Like, so, just now, I don't know. We're just kind of reading reports. Well, Sir Donlan rose from the dead anyway, and he came back and he made a U-turn in his retirement, and I think he had a kind of a big impact on it. I think he picked off a couple of points coming on, and he set up a goal as well. But Dean Riley was the man who was, you know, on hand to, finish two goals, two crucial goals down the end. I think worrying towards the end would have been Kilnadima Leitrim looked like they were coming their way back into it. I think, what was it, they scored 6 points in a row for a finish to get back within a point, but a draw wasn't enough. So from what I've been hearing from people at it, they kind of went in search of goals really rather than anything else, and they couldn't create the openings. I suppose performance of someone like, say, Mark Hinley would have been a huge positive for Pearses. I think he scored 3 points, and especially for Pearses, who were like, I think they were down 5 starters according to some lads from the area. Like, they would have been missing Raftery and Fahy and through injury, and I think the 2 lads playing soccer with Colemanstown as well. They were in junior shield, or I'm not 100% sure. The competition soccer now wouldn't be. Junior soccer wouldn't be my forte, so you might have a bit of you might be able to fill me in there. But the old guard stood up, I believe, from just from chatting to people. It was Sean Hardiman there, and Tom Kinney, and Donlan again, and Emmett Ward, and these lads that are, they've soldiered for Pearses for years, and they're another year safety now. They're Donlan done the old Pádraig Joyce, and he. Nobody kind of expected him to come back, but yes, here he was, and it's great. It's great to see, like, Pearses are, they're a club, like, that you'd have a lot of respect for. They wouldn't have a huge pick or anything like that. 2 small parishes there in Cortrine and Ballymacward, but they always bring great pride in the jersey, and they're always tenacious and aggressive. Like, even if they mightn't be able to rack up the huge tallies, but. It's on contrast to that, it's a worrying, another worrying result for Kilnadima Leitrim. They kind of throughout this championship they've hurled in fits and splurts, and they haven't really delivered a 60-minute performance again. Like, to reel off 6 points for a finish down the home stretch is cracking stuff. Like, but it's again too little, too late, or they leave themselves with too much to do, where they just fall off. It's kind of curious why they can't deliver for maybe 60 minutes in terms of consistency. I think there's probably a massive over-reliance there on Brian Malloy, although, like, say, Jack Kinney and Mikey Lynch do ease the burden somewhat, but defensively, conceding. I think I touched on it already. I think they conceded from chatting to someone there. I think Pearce has missed a penalty as well. I think Emmett Ward missed a penalty. He had a good game, but I think he missed a penalty, and they conceded 3, and they could have conceded 7 by all accounts. So it's just worrying signs there for them. But
I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's where they're getting caught up. They put up, what was it, 119 they scored against Ascafon and 19 points here again. They're for a 60-minute club game, they're cracking scores, but it's the other end that's costing them. So that's kind of the simple summation of what's going on with them, and they've got plenty of good hurlers back there, Dara Donoghue and Kieran Connor and Stephen Roche and lads like that, but that's what's been costing them so far. And in fairness to Pearce's, they were going into this game having lost the 2, but you think back now, having won this game, you think back to the Mulla game, they were so close. They're so close to having gone through. At the same time, a shocking bad start to the year. The first out against Ascafon, but they've put in two good performances since. So kind of rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated.
That's for sure.
In fairness, so plenty credit to them. And as we mentioned, there is young talent starting to come into the team there now that'll grow a bit again next year. Because they won't always have the luxury of bringing Cyril back, and these guys, some of the guys you mentioned there, so they'll be moving on at some stage as well. But they are producing the bit of talent that you don't need that many to be coming in every year to make a big difference. Even 1 or 2 a year makes an awful difference in a club team, because the lifespan of a club player, if all goes well throughout their career, is a long one. It's over 15 years really, probably. So you don't need to be producing that many in the one go. So good result for Pearce's. Would have been a shame to see them go down, for sure. But someone has to go, I suppose. But no, Kennedy and Leitrim certainly wouldn't have seen themselves here at the start of the year. But
no,
more than ourselves in Kildare now, it's all to play for,
That's for sure. I suppose just from a Killeen Leitrim standpoint, I think they had Evan Dowling was in goals, and I think he was supposed to be outstanding. He made a couple of excellent stops, and I think he blocked the penalty as well. So I suppose at least there's some optimism there. You know what I mean? There's someone kind of emerging from a player that we mightn't have heard a whole pile about beforehand. But it's the more we've touched on it again. They've got 2 games now to save themselves, and if they can produce 2 performances, you can put this year in the past no more than yourselves or no more than Kinvara, and build towards the future again, because they have some good players there, no more than the other 2 clubs as well, in Kinvara and Behet. They have some very good players, but I suppose they haven't recorded a victory now in quite a while.
Yeah.
So I suppose if you could just get that one, you'd never know. You can one victory can breed confidence. Victories breed confidence, and confidence breeds success, as they say. And I suppose that's just the way they'll have to look at it now. Just win one, and kind of maybe win 1 or 2 if they can at all, and just maintain the status more than anything else. Because Jesus, would be a huge hammer blow for the club if they were to drop to intermediate.
For sure, yeah, and for a club with so much underage talent produced over the last decade or so, it is, when they went up senior A that time, was it 3 years ago now, it was kind of looked upon at the time as a natural sort of progression for them, but it just didn't really happen for them up there for whatever reason. And we know what the reason was. They lost a lot of lads overseas and whatnot. No club can really sustain those sort of levels without missing marquee players. So but certainly their 2 successive relegations would be a massive blow to any club. So we'll see how things go.
Perfect. Sure. With that, we'll tip onto the intermediate. A few cracking results here in games as well, I think.
An awful weekend for predictors again. Jesus Christ, things went awful bad.
They'll all let you know on Twitter. I know I was told from an Athenry perspective to Niall Sunderland told me to let you know that he was 100% confident Athenry would win when you tipped up Spittle. So just to carry that message there through to you.
That says enough about how things are going for me the last couple of weeks, anyhow.
Well, some of them you couldn't predict, so it's just.
Well, look, you had the added thing of players returning for like Rahun and for Clymer that we'll touch on when we get as far as Group 3, like, you know. But you had teams going from last and seemingly destined for relegation into jumping up into second, and now they're in the quarterfinals, you know. So it really had a weekend of a bit of everything, you know. You like Carnmore going through off the back of a defeat that wasn't. It was a small enough defeat that it was enough to go through in your group, like, you know, sort of way. So it's just we keep mentioning it, the Intermediate Championship. It's a mess, but it's a very entertaining mess.
That's for sure.
You know, so just we'll give a quick I suppose rundown on how things finished up in the group. In Group 1, we had 2 straight playoffs basically between the 2 games the weekend. Whoever won the 2 games was going to go through. So as it turned out, Castlegar beat Kiltormer 118-27, and Abbey-Duniry beat Silan 12 points to 10. So that meant Castlegar and Abbey-Duniry finished level on points at the top, with Castlegar top of the group by way of the head-to-head having beaten Abbey-Duniry in round 2. So Castlegar Kiltormer, Castlegar pretty dominant from the start, really. Dylan Carroll found the net after only a minute, and they never really looked back after that. Led 111 to 4 points, and looked to be cruising towards a handy enough win. And then fairness Kiltormer, they rallied back and they got 2 goals in 4 minutes from Dean Flynn and Jack Kelly. But from there, Castlegar again, fairness, they kicked on with 5 of the last 6 scores, throwing out convincing winners. Like we mentioned in the preview that without Kevin Kane, we thought they might struggle, but look, they put up a good score again and were comfortably better than Kiltormer here. So serious credit to them, serious credit to that club, you know. Like to be producing 2 teams of that quality, like, you know, we harp on about Turlock doing it, and here's Athenry doing it to some degree of success, but Castlegar are right up there now with Turlock, like, you know, in terms of what they're producing, which again it can only lead to future success in senior ranks. But for we'll stick with the intermediate talk here, and a brilliant result for them, you know.
It's probably from the Kiltormer standpoint, it's probably they won't be too disappointed. Like their status secured after last year, you know, and
exactly.
a little bit of controversy that went with that. But geez, no, they're no matter what, they're intermediate next year, and that at this point is a success from their point of view. Yeah,
worth a lot for sure. Yeah, no, it definitely won't be too disheartened, and the fact that they were comfortably outplayed on there too, if they'd lost by a point or 2 and been that close, probably there'll be more disappointment there. But they were well beaten, like, you know. So no question marks over the result, you know. The other one was tight and tense, and probably not the most enjoyable game to watch, I'd imagine, judging by what I've heard in reports and scorelines. But 12 points to 10, Abbey beat Silan. Tough test for Abbey, but came through it. And to be honest, after day 1, you know, Silan, a great start to the year for Silan against Kiltormer, or not Kiltormer, Castlegar. It's gone fairly pear-shaped for them. I think they'll be very disappointed to find themselves where they are in relegation now, you know.
Yeah, I suppose the result that really killed them would have been the Kiltormer game, because that would have come out of nowhere. Like Abbey probably, all things considered, would have been expected to beat them in the last round anyway. They were probably a bit further down the line and everything. I know whatever missing a couple are still, but they probably would have still been expected to beat them. But that Kiltormer game was just a nightmare scenario, especially when they were. I think they were in a good position as well. They were leading, and then suddenly there was a bit of a collapse there. Now geez, they're in with, like, they're playing. It's Enna Down, isn't it, in the relegation? I think it's Enna Down. So like that's no easy test there either. You know what I mean? Like they've Enna Down have plenty of quality in their own right, but I suppose we'll leave that for another day. But yeah, bitterly disappointing, because we played Silan in a challenge game, and they look like a right good team, like, and you know they've someone like Keelan Craven there, and we mentioned them before, like Adrian Larner and Owen Martin, and these lads should be, you know, top hurlers at intermediate level, but for whatever reason it just hasn't happened for them. And now, you know, that last result there against Abbey-Duniry, you know, as you said, if you're only scoring 10 points in a game, I know Abbey only scored 12, but if you're only scoring 10 points in a game, it's going to be very, very hard for you to win, you know, no matter what.
That's true, yeah.
You know, so you just that's regardless of what conditions we're like, you probably should be scoring a bit more. But yeah, no, they have it all to do to save themselves, you know. But you know,
I think Abbey-Duniry would be happy to get through out the group, and you know, they've had issues to overcome in terms of personnel and being unavailable and that sort of thing. And now that the footballers are out as well, hopefully they probably. I'm not sure did they have players back last week, and I never checked that out. But going forward, they'll be hoping to have a rattle off at this stage. The pressure's off in many ways, and that they've gotten through. So they can have a go from here on at least. Then moving on to your own group, David. Great win for yourselves against Anspejel. Was nearly enough to get through, not quite, but overall, judging by the amount of points you sunk on Sunday night, you were happy enough to hold on to your status anyhow.
Oh, absolutely. We'll leave that at the door now. Anyway, we'll stick to the hurling because, Athenry. Yeah, no, Jesus. Like, if I'm just working with the group all year, I'll just say like it was a result I probably knew we had in us, if nothing else, you know what I mean? Like I said, we just kind of spoke on Friday night before throwing, and I just said like if we were capable of just showing our ability, like over the 60 minutes, I had every faith in us that we were going to win. Like it's such a strange situation though in Athenry, like because like having an intermediate team, the other teams that have a senior team, they're all senior A, but having an intermediate team when you're a senior B team is a head scratcher in a way. It's curious enough, but as I was just saying to them, like especially to the younger lads, we have a great opportunity. They had a great opportunity now because they're obviously very close to senior hurling and being good enough to play senior hurling. Like there's lads there that are like say Alan Harverty, who really put his hand up this year, and there's a few he was excellent for us. And Jesus, we had him on a hooky, and he's a fella that didn't even start the under-21 final for them last year. But geez, he did a ferocious job. He didn't give a hooky an ounce of breathing room all day. He got the hurling every time, and I suppose we have that bit of quality that people might underestimate us with. Like we have say Cathal Kane there, who like could be he probably should be hurling senior for Athenry. I know he's living in Dublin and stuff like that, but Jesus, he'd be a massive addition if they could get him involved. Like, 'cause in my eyes, from just looking at the intermediate championship, he'd be one of the best players in it. And we lost him. So just on the breakdown of the game, our game plan worked to a T. Like really, we knew they were going to go short with their puck out. So we had the win first half, and we kind of squeezed up on them, and they probably lacked that bit of natural hurling instinct because they are a football club at the end of the day, and they were trying to go short, but we squeezed up, and I think we turned over at least two balls there from them, and we're just that bit sharper in the kind of all over, particularly in the first half. Being honest, we probably should have, as I said earlier on, we probably should be looking at the scoreboard a bit more, but we were just so worried about getting over the line that it didn't matter. Like with some elder statesman again there, like say the two Donoghue twins, Shane and Davy. Davy scored 1-4 from play, like at 40 years of age. He was centre forward from his, like, he was just incredible what that man can do. And Shane has just added so much to see his appendix out only, I'd say, 5 or 6 weeks ago, but like a fella like him, he just wants to play. We asked him, like, he played last round. He came on as a sub against Carnmore, and to be honest, he made such a difference to us. Just his experience there. Liam Howley was another one who just came out with a ferocious amount of ball. We fully deserved the victory. They got a goal from a free and a scrappy goal towards the end, and Carnmore happened to get a goal around the same time as well. And Jesus, it just kind of. We didn't realise it until the end, and I suppose I'm a bit disappointed this week now. I was delighted. I was ecstatic after the game that we'd held on to the status because that was the first and foremost. But now looking back, Jesus, we had every chance of progressing, but we just failed to do it. Carnmore, to their credit, they defeated us, and they got the scores. They stayed in close enough to Kilkenarn so that they did their job and we didn't do ours, but. By and large, I think if you offered me that we would have stayed in intermediate at the start of the year, I'd have been delighted with it. And now it's a real chance for some of these lads. You have your Kieran Hardimans, your Alan Harvertys, you have a few more young lads there that can really kick on now next year, and maybe be an option there for the senior panel, and be pushing a few lads there, and there'll be lads I'd be very confident that they could make a big contribution in senior hurling in the coming years anyway, for sure.
For sure, yeah. And as you mentioned, kind of you were in the position to get the job done, and between yourselves kind of leaking a few scores, and then Carnmore, which we'll move on to now. They got a goal from Conor Flaherty free to cut the final margin to 9 points. Their defeat to Kilkenarn, you know. So losing to Kilkenarn by 9 points now, there's certainly no shame in that, you know. So a good result for Carnmore, which turned out to be a great result in that it was enough to get them through. Which is, you know, for a club like Carnmore, it's great to see them kind of looking up rather than down, which is what they've been doing for a few years now. So just kind of a bit of positivity for them anyhow, you know, going forward. So
absolutely,
certainly plenty of relief in many respects to be gone through, and a lot of credit due. In that, you know, that they were 8 down at half time, you know, and probably in reality weren't going to reel it in, like, you know, but to only lose second half by a point, turned out to be crucial in the end. And you know, there's you have to show kind of they were very resolute to be able to do that, you know, because Kilkenarn, as we know, have the talent to just go to town really at that level, you know.
Oh, I know,
especially when they conceded the second goal too. Like, you know, Shane Coffey got their second goal, but as we mentioned, Flaherty's goal kind of brought it back to 9 for a finish and was just about enough for them. So, good weekends work for Carnmore, and you know, as we know of the Intermediate Championship, once you're there, you never know what can happen. You know,
just on Kilkenarn, I think they will take stopping this year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
From what I've seen, I think they've just gone to another level. Even in comparison to the last 2 years with the mid-finals, and it'll take some team to beat them. To be honest with you, now, I'd be if you were having a cheeky wager on something, there's definitely worse places you could put it on than Kilkenarn winning this competition this year. They just look a cut above the rest in my eyes from what I've seen anyway.
That's for sure, yeah. And then from there we'll go on to Group 3, where we had the top 2 teams going into the week were beaten by the bottom 2 teams, and convincingly in both cases. Clymer beaten Turlock 218 to 16 points, and fair to say the result of the weekend, no question about that. They were absolutely heroic to go out and beat Turlock by that margin. You know, albeit as we know, Turlock were guaranteed top spots, so that's certainly a factor. But in any case, all Clymer could do was worry about their own corner, and you know, they were brilliant. Without question, their best performance of the year, and the way things worked out, you know, had Abbey-Duniry got a result against Rahul Newcastle, it didn't matter what Clymer would have done; it wouldn't have been enough to go through. But turns out that Rahul picked up the win, beat Abbey-Duniry 5 points, and Clymer went through on scoring difference ahead of Rahul by a single point. And that point came in the 9th minute of injury time. Jason Broderick with the free. So just phenomenal stuff in the championship over the last week or so. Unbelievable stuff. But huge result for Clymer. Absolutely huge. Considering of all the teams going into the week, you would say they're the ones staring down the barrel of they're probably going into relegation, and to turn it around in the way they did, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we played them actually the week beforehand, just before the championship, and we bet them by 9 points. I would have said from that viewing, because I think they didn't appear to be missing a whole lot of players. Like said, you know, your Andy Carey's and a few more lads were playing, and I would have said against Turlock, not a chance would they have pulled it out of the fire. But Cyril Farrell is an interesting addition. He's involved with them there this year, and he worked his mastery again along with the rest of the management team, I suppose. But incredible result, and you know, it's great to see a small club like Clymer do the business, because you know they kind of they're kind of going under the radar. They're not producing intercounty players a whole pile at the moment, but they're still always there, and they're dogged, and they've got the reward now. Incredible really for them, and you know you'd be hard not to be delighted for them in a sense.
For sure, yeah. And then the other side of things, I suppose, Abbey-Duniry, no doubt, no more than Ceylon, one of the most disappointed teams this week.
Yeah.
Fate completely in their own hands. A win or a draw would have done them. But beaten by the better side on the day. They're returning John Hanbury with a goal, and Eamon Brannigan also, he was back for them. So straight away you're looking at a totally different Rahul Newcastle team, and so it proved in the performance, you know. They got the 2 goals late on, but had been leading kind of for most of the game. Niall Kineen came on for Abbey-Duniry and scored 1-2 to bring it back. And then Peter Healing got sent off, and from there, Rahul Newcastle got the 2 goals. And again, I think no complaints from Abbey-Duniry. Full value for the 5-point victory Rahul Newcastle were.
Yeah, I'm fierce disappointed in Abbey-Duniry this year. I thought they would have been, just kind of looking at their squad and having seen them a few times. I would have expected them to probably make a knockout stages, given the group they were in. You know what I mean? Like it was a group, especially particularly now. I know Rahun had the 2 boys back in Brannigan and Hanbury this weekend, which is, as you mentioned already, it's like a completely different team. Like even having a player like of Hanbury's quality at intermediate level is just it can be vital. Like say, I know Niall Kineen only came on as a sub, but I think he was lively when he came on. But just from the attack they should have, like I don't know. I think it's a disappointing year. Maybe the balance act with football is probably proven too much to them. Like it's been disappointing on both coaches them so far. But sure, we won't get into that now. I know, but yeah, at the end of the day, they have a real battle on their hands now, as we mentioned already against Ceylon.
Yeah, there's certainly nothing handy in that relegation, and like the kind of one of the pre-championship favourites are in there as well now. Meath Harcourt, they needed a win or else a kind of a 22-point apiece draw. They held up there into the bargain that they scored 22 points on the button, but problem was they conceded 27 and lost out 3-18 to 4-10 against Mike Cullen. And in fairness, that scoreline does flatters Meath Harcourt, couple of late goals. Mike Cullen were excellent by all accounts throughout, and a huge score to rack up. So signs that Mike Cullen are kind of probably the ones that themselves and Turlock, they're the 2 that are going to challenge Kilkenny anyhow, that's for sure.
Yeah, but just on that evidence, they would be the closest, wouldn't they? Really, it's hard to see anyone else, really given the Kilkenny a real rattle at it. I suppose just from that, we've touched on it so many times before, but you'd be delighted for Kilbacon in a way. Just the neighbours, they've had their bit of trouble over the last few years, but just that they're there. But I suppose we leave that for another weekend. But Mike Cullen, but they've quality all over the field. Like Mike Cullen, like they have. They've likes of like they have Niall Mallion, isn't it? He's involved with them. Yeah. And there's a few more. Like they've some excellent hurlers. Like it's the 2 lads from the county minor panel, I think, last year as well, playing for them. So
Davern and Colin Cunningham.
Cunningham, yeah. So look on that alone, like you'd be, they were strong as it was. Never mind adding these 2 county minors in. So they for me probably are the closest, and maybe Turlock third, but you just don't know. Like, but even at that, I still have just that inkling that it's Kilkenny's year. I know I said it in people have probably said it in the past, but they're the team to beat now if they can.
Disappointing with Meath Harcourt this year. Really, they were totally outplayed here. 8 points to no score. Mike Cullen led at the start before Harcourt got themselves back into it with a goal. Michael Larkin got a goal, but then Mike Cullen struck back. Niall Manning hit a brace for them to make it 2-9 to 1-2 by the end of the first quarter, which 1-2 isn't a bad score for a quarter's hurling, but you find yourself 10 points behind. It's it's unforgivable really in many respects. Sean McDonough got their Mike Cullen's 3rd goal after the break, and they led 3-18 to 2-9 before Harcourt got 2-1 late on as consolation score. So they turned a 12-point defeat into a 5-point defeat, but they were totally outclassed. And I think there's serious disappointment in Harcourt and how they've gone this year. They've been kind of had been ultra impressive in a couple of previous group campaigns, and then been disappointing when they got to the knockout stage. But geez, they didn't even get the chance to be disappointing this year because they didn't get there.
And Niall Corcoran being back would have been a big boost to them as well. Do you know what I mean? It would have been seen as a massive addition there in terms of experience and everything. But you know what? I'll tell you what went wrong from Meath Harcourt. You tipped them. You tipped them. You gave them the kiss of death.
Sure. Yeah, well, you could be right. So Kennedy needs them to beat Baha next week, and you heard it here first.
I suppose with that, we'll probably just call it a night. Another bumper show, as we'll say. There's no shortage of time. We're planning on churning out another one pretty quickly afterwards, a preview show. So we might have a competition on the horizon coming up as well. So we'll post details of that on social media. So stay tuned there. Thanks again, Patrick, for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow, where we'll be recording the preview show ahead of this weekend's action. Another crazy weekend of action, no doubt, ahead of us. Thanks a million, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.